Jews and Arabs have been at war for 4,000 years, and the Bible tells you why with a level of precision that should shake anyone who thinks this is just a modern fight over land. Most people reduce this conflict to borders, politics, settlements, treaties, maps. But if it were only about land, it would have ended a long time ago. Every generation draws new lines, signs new agreements, stages new handshakes, announces a new breakthrough, and every time the fire comes back, every ceasefire collapses. Every promise of peace breaks apart, and the reason is deeper than diplomacy is willing to admit. The world keeps trying to solve a spiritual fracture with political paperwork. But this war did not begin in a parliament, a palace, or a peace summit. It began in Genesis. It began with a promise, a delay, a wound inside one family, and a decision made in the silence between what God said and when God seemed to act. If you want to understand why this conflict keeps returning, you have to go back to the moment the fuse was lit. And the fuse was not a sword, it was a covenant. Around 2100 BC, in Ur, in what is now southern Iraq, God made a covenant with a man named Abram. The promise was staggering. God promised him a land, the land of Canaan, stretching from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. He promised descendants beyond counting, like stars scattered across the night sky and sand spread across a shoreline. And he promised something even bigger than land or bloodline, that through Abram's offspring, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Genesis 12, 15, and 17 lay out this covenant in detail. But what sealed that covenant matters just as much as the words themselves. In Genesis 15, Abraham was told to bring a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. The larger animals were cut in half and laid opposite each other. In the ancient Near East, that was how serious covenants were made. Both parties would walk between the pieces as a living oath, a way of saying, "May I be torn apart like these animals if I break this word?" But when the moment came, Abraham did not walk. He fell into a deep sleep. A dreadful darkness came over him, and only God, represented by a smoking firepot and a blazing torch, passed between the pieces. Abraham stayed still. God moved alone. That changes everything. This was not a negotiated partnership. This was a unilateral, unconditional, divine commitment. God put his own name on the line. There was just one impossible detail. Abraham had no son. Sarah was barren. And in that world, childlessness was not a private ache. It was a public humiliation. A man without an heir was seen as cut off, exposed, almost erased. His name would disappear from the family record. His land would pass to others. His wealth would be absorbed by distant relatives. His future would evaporate like water on hot stone. In the honor-shame culture of Mesopotamia, barrenness clung to a household like dust. It was visible. It was whispered about. It followed people. And year after year, that silence would have eaten at Abraham from the inside. God had spoken, but time kept passing. No timeline, no explanation, no visible movement. Just wait. So Abraham waited through his 60s, then his 70s, then into his 80s. 25 years. 25 years of carrying a promise he could not touch. 25 years of watching other men's sons become heirs, warriors, fathers, while his own tent stayed quiet. 25 years of standing in the gap between divine words and human evidence. That kind of silence does something to a person. It wears you down slowly. It makes even faith feel heavy. And by the time Abraham was 86, something finally cracked. Sarah came to him with a solution. In her world, it was completely lawful. Tablets discovered at Nuzi in modern northern Iraq confirmed that a barren wife could give her servant to her husband as a surrogate in order to secure a legal heir. Sarah was not inventing a strange scheme. She was acting within accepted custom. She offered Hagar, her Egyptian servant, to Abraham. The logic was brutally simple. If God would not bring the miracle, they would produce the outcome another way. Abraham agreed. And in that single decision, born out of exhaustion, social pressure, grief, and the unbearable strain of waiting on a God who seemed silent, he tried to manufacture with human hands what God had promised to do by miracle. They thought they were protecting the future. They had no idea they were setting loose a fracture that would echo through history and push their descendants toward annihilation. Hagar conceived almost immediately, and the second she did, the house split open. The servant now carried the thing her mistress could not produce. She had the air in her body. The power had shifted. The woman who once looked down in deference now looked at Sarah with contempt. Sarah, crushed by the shame of the arrangement she herself had proposed, turned on Hagar with such severity that the pregnant woman fled alone into the desert. That image matters. A used servant, a pregnant body, dry heat, empty distance, no safety, no protection, no place to go, on the road to Shur, toward Egypt. Near a spring along an ancient trade route, the angel of the Lord found her and told her to return. But the angel also spoke over the unborn child in her womb, and that prophecy would prove terrifyingly durable. Genesis 16:12 says, "He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." That verse, spoken in the wilderness over a child not yet born, reads like a headline stretched across centuries of Middle Eastern history. The boy would be named Ishmael, meaning God hears. Hagar returned. Ishmael was born. Abraham was 86, and Abraham believed, deeply, sincerely, that this was the fulfillment. For 13 years, Ishmael was his only son. For 13 years, Abraham held him, taught him, raised him, loved him, and assumed that this child was the answer to the promise. That love was real. Later, when God revealed that the covenant would pass through a different son, Abraham's response was not cold theology. It was the cry of a father. In Genesis 17:18, he pleads, "Oh, that Ishmael might live under your blessing." And God's answer split history. He said Ishmael would indeed be blessed. He would be fruitful. He would multiply greatly. He would father 12 rulers. He would become a great nation. But the covenant, the thing at the center, the line carrying the land, the lineage, the law, and ultimately the Messiah, would go through Isaac, the son Sarah would bear. 2 sons, 2 destinies. One received blessing, one received covenant. The blessing was real, the covenant was everything, and the distinction was not arbitrary. 2,000 years later, Paul explains it in Galatians 4. Ishmael was the son born according to the flesh. Isaac was the son born according to promise. Hagar and Sarah represented 2 covenants, one bound to slavery, one bound to freedom. Paul's point is sharp. What human effort produces cannot inherit what only divine promise can establish. Sarah's plan may have been legal in Mesopotamia, but legality is not the same thing as divine authorization. What fit the custom of the age still violated the logic of God. Abraham tried to build God's future with his own hands, and the structure began cracking the moment it stood. One son was blessed, the other carried the blueprint, and that collision was about to rip the family apart. Isaac was born when Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90. The impossible child arrived. The promised son came into the world against every biological expectation, but miracles do not erase the consequences of impatient decisions. The house that was already fractured became a battlefield. Genesis 21 records the breaking point. At a feast celebrating Isaac's weaning, Sarah saw Ishmael, now a teenager, mocking the child. The Hebrew word is metahek. Scholars debate whether it means ridicule, contempt, bullying, or something more threatening, but no one debates Sarah's reaction. She demanded that Hagar and Ishmael be driven out for good. Abraham was shattered. This was his firstborn, the son he had raised for more than 14 years, the boy he had asked God to bless, and now he was being told to send him away. God told Abraham to listen to Sarah. So the next morning, Abraham got up early, put bread and a skin of water on Hagar's shoulders, gave her the boy, and sent them into the wilderness. Stop there and see it. The Negev desert, blazing heat, sand and rock under a punishing sky. No city in sight, no shelter, no caravan, no second chance. Just a woman, a boy, one skin of water, and the slow terror of realizing it will not be enough. The water ran out. The food was gone. Ishmael began to fail. Hagar placed him under a desert bush, then walked a bowshot away because she could not bear to watch her son die. She sat in the sand and wept. That is not abstract theology. That is a mother counting the final breaths of her child under a white-hot sky. Then heaven broke in. The angel of God called to her, told her not to be afraid, said God had heard the boy crying, and promised again to make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well in the desert. Water where she thought there was only death. The boy drank, the boy lived. But there is something else in this story almost nobody stops to notice. Before Ishmael was even born, during Hagar's first flight into the wilderness, Hagar did something no human being in Scripture had done before. She gave God a name. In Genesis 16:13, she called him El Roi, the God who sees me, not Abraham, not one of the patriarchs. Hagar, the rejected slave, the borrowed body, the woman used for somebody else's solution and discarded when the arrangement turned bitter. She is the first person in the Bible to name the Creator. You are the God who sees me. And the place was called Bir Lahai Roi, the well of the living one who sees me. That detail cuts deep. God did not ignore Hagar. He did not pass over her pain. He saw her. He spoke to her. He preserved her son. He promised her a future. The tragedy here is not that Ishmael was cursed or forgotten. He was not. The tragedy is that the covenant ran through another line, and the wound created by that separation never healed. Ishmael survived. He grew strong. Genesis says God was with the boy as he grew. He lived in the wilderness of Paran. He became an archer, a desert fighter shaped by hardship and open land. Hagar got him an Egyptian wife, tying him back to her own roots. And from Ishmael came 12 sons, 12 princes, exactly as God had promised: Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jeter, Naphish, and Kedemah. They spread across the eastern wilderness from Havilah to Shur, near Egypt. They became tribal rulers. They became peoples. They became a permanent ring around the land promised to Isaac's descendants. The brother who was sent away did not disappear. He remained at the edge of the promise, generation after generation. And time did not close the wound, it deepened it. The covenant passed from Isaac to Jacob, later named Israel. But Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau, and the fracture widened again. Esau was the firstborn. By every social expectation, the birthright belonged to him, but in Genesis 25, he sold it to Jacob for a bowl of stew, a decision so reckless the text says he despised his birthright. Then came Genesis 27. Jacob deceived his old blind father and stole the blessing meant for Esau. When Esau realized what had happened, he broke open in grief. Scripture says he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, "Bless me, even me also, my father." You can feel the room in that moment. An old man whose hands have already given away what cannot be taken back. A son shaking with rage and loss. A blessing gone, an inheritance slipping out of reach. Esau leaves with murder in his heart. Then he makes a move that changes the map. Genesis 28-9 says Esau went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son. That was not romance. It was strategy. The displaced twin joined himself to the displaced firstborn. 2 lines marked by rejection, grievance, and stolen inheritance merged blood, memory, and hostility. Esau became the father of Edom. The Edomites settled in the rough mountainous territory of Seir, south of the Dead Sea, in what is now southern Jordan. And Edom's hostility toward Israel hardened across the centuries. When Moses led Israel out of Egypt, Edom refused them passage. When Israel formed a kingdom, Edom resisted repeatedly. When Babylon destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC, Edom stood on the heights and rejoiced. Obadiah records the betrayal with chilling clarity. They watched their brother fall and acted like strangers. Abraham's wound was now moving through history with military force. The Ishmaelite princes spread through northern Arabia, and other relatives filled the remaining ground. Moab and Ammon, descended from Lot and his daughters after the destruction of Sodom in Genesis 19, settled east of the Jordan. They were not part of the Ishmael-Esau alliance, but they belonged to the same broken family system: more wounded kin, more contested borders, more inherited pain pressed against the edges of the promise. Look at the geography, and the meaning becomes hard to ignore. Israel in the center, Edom to the south, Ishmael's descendants across the surrounding wilderness, Moab and Ammon to the east, Philistia to the west. Every border was a family wound. Every neighboring enemy shared blood somewhere in the story. This was not just geopolitics. It was unresolved household trauma turned into foreign policy. These wars were never merely about wells, fields, trade routes, or grazing rights. At the core, they were about inheritance, about which son carried heaven's mandate. And no ruler on earth could settle that by force or treaty, because the claim itself rose above politics. The lines were drawn in the sand long before modern states existed. But the conflict was about to take on a darker dimension. It would become not only ethnic and territorial, but theological. Fast forward roughly 25 centuries. In the 7th century AD, on the Arabian Peninsula, Muhammad founded a faith that would transform the spiritual map of the world. Islam traced its spiritual ancestry back to Abraham, not through Isaac, but through Ishmael. In Islamic tradition, it is Ishmael, not Isaac, who is associated with the sacrifice. The Kaaba in Mecca, Islam's holiest site, is believed to have been built by Abraham and Ishmael together as a house of worship to the one God. Every year, millions of Muslims circle the Kaaba during Hajj, retracing what they believe are the footsteps of Abraham and his firstborn son. That is not a side detail. That is civilizational architecture. Islam elevated the Ishmaelite line into the center of its sacred identity. Ishmael became more than an ancestor. He became a theological anchor, and the implications were enormous. Judaism and Islam, two of the largest civilizations on earth, both claim Abraham, both revere the God of Abraham, both root themselves in his story, and both carry deeply embedded convictions about divine inheritance connected to the same land. Now, this distinction matters. Not all modern Arabs are direct genetic descendants of Ishmael. The Arab world is vast, ancient, and ethnically diverse. Many lineages predate Ishmael entirely or developed apart from Abraham's family. Islam itself arose more than 2.5 millennia after Abraham lived. So this is not a simplistic war of blood DNA. It is a war of spiritual identity, of covenantal claim, of who stands inside Abraham's true inheritance before God. And that kind of conflict cannot be fixed by a border commission. It also needs to be said that the idea of non-stop, unbroken Jewish-Arab bloodshed across all centuries is historically false. There were periods, especially under parts of the Islamic Golden Age in Al-Andalus and under the Ottoman world, where Jews and Arabs lived in coexistence far more humane than what Jews often experienced in Christian Europe. Jewish thinkers flourished in Muslim courts. Jewish communities found refuge in Muslim lands, while Europe expelled or slaughtered them. The history is more layered than headline slogans allow, but the theological fault line never fully closed. It stayed under the surface like pressure under rock, waiting. Then, in 1948, with the establishment of the modern state of Israel on land, both traditions saw in sacred terms. The buried fracture split open again with a violence that still has not stopped. And then the Bible says something that should make people pause. Psalm 83, written about 3,000 years ago, records a prayer against a coalition conspiring to erase Israel so that its name would be remembered no more. and the psalm names the players: Edom, the Ishmaelites, Moab, the Hagrites, Ammon, Gebal, Amalek, Philistia, Tyre, Assyria. Read that slowly, and the pattern comes into view. Edom, the line of Esau, the displaced brother. The Ishmaelites, the line of the firstborn sent away. Moab and Ammon, Abraham's wider family. The Hagrites, tied to Hagar, the expelled mother. The psalm is not vague. It is not misty symbolism. It is a named coalition preserved on ancient parchment for 3,000 years, and its geography maps with unsettling force onto the enemies and pressures surrounding Israel in documented history. This pattern has resurfaced again and again, from the age of the judges to the exile to modern wars. The biblical claim is not that diplomats will finally untangle it in Geneva or New York. The biblical horizon points to a final resolution only at the return of the Messiah to Jerusalem. But there is one scene tucked into Genesis that almost no one talks about, and it changes the emotional temperature of the whole story. Genesis 25-9. Abraham dies. And Scripture says Isaac and Ishmael buried him together. Let that settle. After the expulsion, after the desert, after the split that would shape nations, after years of separation, the two brothers stood over the body of the same father. In that moment, they were not symbols, not civilizations, not rival claims. They were two sons burying the man they both loved. Jewish tradition notices that Isaac is named first, even though Ishmael was older. Many interpret that as a quiet sign that Ishmael yielded to Isaac's place in the covenant. A small act, a profound act. Reconciliation, if only for a moment. And according to the ancient Jewish principle that the deeds of the fathers are signs for the children, that moment may have been more than history. It may have been prophecy. In our own time, something striking happened. In 2020, several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, signed peace agreements with Israel, and the name chosen for those agreements was deeply revealing. The Abraham Accords, not a technical label, not a cold diplomatic title. Abraham, the common father named out loud in the middle of modern diplomacy, a public admission that beneath the conflict, the root is shared. But here is the hardest part, and the part that turns this from history into a mirror. We are making Abraham's mistake right now. All of this, the wars, the rockets, the exiles, the rival claims, the theology, the blood, the headlines, the Psalm 83 coalitions, the smoke over Jerusalem, it all runs back to one exhausted man who could not keep waiting. Abraham was not trying to start a civilizational war. He was not a cartoon villain. He was an old man holding a promise that seemed less believable with every passing year. He was tired. He was surrounded by a culture offering him a lawful, rational shortcut, and he took it. He reached for a solution God had not authorized. That is where the fracture began. And before we get to the end, you need to see how alive that pattern still is. It shows up every time a person confuses urgency with permission. Every time silence feels so unbearable that we decide movement must be obedience. Every time a family, a leader, a church, a nation, or a wounded heart reaches for control because waiting feels like death. That ancient pattern is still playing out in living rooms, marriages, ministries, boardrooms, and private decisions no one else sees. People force relationships because loneliness feels louder than wisdom. They grab money in ways their conscience already warned them about because the honest road feels too slow. They build careers on foundations they know God never breathed on because the promised door has not opened and they cannot bear the humiliation of delay. They keep pouring years into decisions made in panic, trying to redeem by sheer effort what heaven never initiated. That is why this story still burns. It is not trapped in deserts and patriarchs. It repeats in modern flesh. You can still hear Hagar crying under the bush in every person who has been used by someone else's impatience. You can still see Edom in every family line that keeps handing bitterness to the next generation. You can still feel Abraham in every exhausted soul trying to force a promise to arrive on a human timeline. And once that pattern hardens, the damage spreads. One private compromise becomes a house divided. One workaround becomes a wound. One act of impatient self-rescue becomes a war your children inherit. That is how tragedy multiplies. It does not always enter with violence. Sometimes it enters wearing the face of practicality. So now the question is no longer about Abraham alone. It is about you. What is the Ishmael you are building right now? What are you forcing into existence because you are tired of waiting? What promise has taken so long that you have started helping God? Is it a relationship you know is wrong, but solitude has worn you thin? Is it a financial shortcut because the clean path feels too slow? Is it a career, an alliance, a compromise, a decision you made last year or 10 years ago that you are still spending your life trying to justify, sustain, and protect, even though deep down you know God never breathed on it? Look at the consequences of human beings trying to finish God's work without God's timing. Look at the desert where a mother thought her son would die. Look at the hills where relatives cheered while Jerusalem burned. Look at the sky over the same land even now, still scarred by conflict. Abraham's impatience did not stay personal. It redrew borders. When you build what God did not breathe on, you do not get peace. You get a war in your conscience, a war in your home, a war in your future, a war that can outlive you. But buried inside this tragedy is grace. God did not abandon Hagar. God did not let Ishmael die. God saw the discarded woman. God heard the crying boy. God opened her eyes to water in the middle of the wasteland. God blessed the son born from human effort, even while preserving the covenant through the Son of Promise. His mercy is wide enough to meet us in the wreckage we create, but His covenant still requires trust. It still requires surrender. It still requires the terrifying humility of letting God keep His word in His time, not ours. So, drop Ishmael. Whatever you are manufacturing in God's name without God's breath, release it. Stop dragging it. Stop defending it. Stop calling panic by the name of faith. Trust the timing of Isaac. The miracle is not late. It is on God's clock. And when it comes, it will carry a weight no human scheme could ever produce. Abraham could not wait for God, and 4,000 years later, the world is still paying for that one night. If this hit something real in you, don't leave quietly. Write it in the comments. Not for the algorithm, as a mark, as a confession, as a way of saying, I see the pattern now, and I refuse to keep building wars in my own life. And if you know someone standing in that same dangerous silence between promise and panic, share this with them. Subscribe if you want more videos that go beneath the surface and get to the root.